Hey everybody, Rob here at etrailer.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at the CURT Class 1 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2020 Buick Encore. Now here's what our hitch is going to look like once we have it installed. The cross tube is going to be visible. It's going to sit down right below the bumper, but it does sit back a little bit. The main thing we're going to see is the receiver tube sticking out. Now it's not going to stick out past the bumper, but it's pretty close to being flush, so it's nice that we're not going to have to worry about hitting our leg on it when we're walking by. But again, it is a Class 1, which means it's going to give us that 1¼ by 1¼ receiver tube opening, and it's going to be great for light-duty towing, bike racks, or even cargo carriers. But regardless of how you're going to be using your hitch, all of your accessories are going to mount to the hitch pin hole here on the side. Now, the hitch is going to accept a standard 1/2" pin and clip. Now these are not going to come with the hitch, but you can find them here at etrailer.com, along with some locking devices and anti-rattle devices to cut down on the annoying rattle coming from the back of the receiver tube. Now if you are going to be towing, there's a few things to keep in mind. There is a specific drawbar or ball mount made for our hitch here. Now it is going to be sold separately, but again, you can find it here at etrailer.com. And obviously if you're towing, even if it's a jet ski trailer or a small utility trailer, you got to hook up your safety chains. And here we have a plate style. It's welded to the bottom of the receiver tube. And we should have plenty of room to get most size hooks on or off, like these normal sized ones. And you can also see that it's offset from the pinhole, so we really don't have to worry about any kind of interference from our pin and clip or any kind of locking device. Now if you have some oversized hooks, there's still plenty of room to get them hooked on and take them off, again without worrying about interfering from the pin and clip or possibly hitting the bottom of our Buick. Now obviously if you're looking for a hitch, you have something in mind you want to do with the hitch, and you need to make sure it's up to the task that you put it to. So as far as the weight rating goes, our hitch is going to have a 200-pound tongue weight. That's going to be the maximum downward force at the end of the receiver tube. Now this is a Class 1, so we are going to be limited to using Class 1 accessories, so you do want to keep that in mind if you're looking for a bike rack, because we're only going to be able to carry up to 2 bikes with this. Now, the hitch is also going to have a 2,000-pound gross trailer weight rating. That's how much it can pull, but that does include the trailer and the load we have on it. So I do urge you to double check your Buick's owner's manual, because those are the ratings for our hitch, and we don't want to exceed the manufacturer's rating for our car. I'd like to give you a few measurements, and these are going to help you when you're looking for accessories for your new hitch, like a bike rack or a cargo carrier. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper, it's going to be right about 5 inches. That measurement is going to help you out whenever you're looking at folding accessories to make sure you have enough room to put them in the upright stored position and not make contact with the rear bumper. From the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening is going to be right about 11.5 inches. Now at that height, I definitely recommend a bike rack or a cargo carrier with a raised shank. That way we get a little bit more ground clearance out of it. But now that we've seen what our hitch looks like and gone over some of the features, let's bring it in the shop so we can go through the installation process together so you can have the confidence to do it at home. The first step of our installation is going to be lowering the exhaust. So I'm going to use a strap, but if you're at home and you're using a jack stand, you can put a jack stand, anything underneath the exhaust to support it so it doesn't come down too far. So just find a secure point on each side. Then I'm going to cinch the strap down to where it's nice and tight against the exhaust so it won't come down too far whenever we loosen it up. Now if we come to each side of the muffler, we're going to find a rubber isolator with a metal hanger on it. I always find it easy if we spray a little bit of lubricant on there. It'll make the hanger easier to slide. And the main goal here is to get that isolator off the hanger. So just take a pry bar and pry against it until we can slide it off. Now we're going to have another one of these on the passenger side just directly across. So we'll remove that one as well. Then once you have it loosened, we can loosen up that strap so we have a little bit more working room underneath here. Now we're on the driver's side frame rail over here, and if we look right behind the exhaust hanger and that rubber isolator, we're going to find several holes in the bottom of the frame. Now our access hole is going to be this one that has a line going over it, so we can actually just take that line, kind of pry open the clip a little bit. We're just going to move it to the outside so it's a little bit out of the way. Now the hole behind that towards the back of the bumper is going to be one mounting location. Now we need to get our hardware in place, so we want to grab one of the pull wires out of our kit. We're going to take the coiled end. I'm going to put a slight bend in it. We'll feed the coiled end of the wire in, and the goal is to have it come out the large access hole. Now you want to make sure you leave the tail end and the coiled end sticking out of the frame. We'll grab a square hole spacer block. We're going to slide it over the end of our wire. We'll push it into the frame. Then we'll take a carriage bolt, we'll thread it onto the end of our wire and push that in the frame. You want to pull on the wire until the bolt drops through the block and down through the frame. Now I always like to leave my pull wires attached, that way we don't have any way that the bolt will get pushed back in the frame, and if it does, we can just pull it back down. Now if we look on the side of the frame, on the outside, we're going to have two holes that are threaded. Now I always like to come back and clean them out, so I sprayed some spray lubricant in there, and then I'm going to take a nylon tube brush. I'm going to make sure there's no debris, dirt, or anything else in the frame. Just clean them out really good. Then once you have them cleaned out, we can grab one of the hex bolts from our kit. Now I do want to mention that there's two different bolts in our kit. There's a fine thread and a coarse thread. You want to double check what kind of threads are in the frame, and the easiest way is once you have them cleaned, we'll take our bolt and we're just going to thread it in by hand. If the bolt threads in easily, it's clean and that's the correct bolt to use. So we want to go through and double check all the holes in the frame and make sure we use the appropriate bolt. And we're going to have the exact same mounting locations on the passenger side. So we're going to go ahead and fish wire our bolts in the side, and then clean the weld nuts and double check, make sure they can be threaded in by hand as well. Now with the next set of hands, we're going to lift our hitch up. Now you do kind of have to pull the exhaust down, use that little cutout on the bumper so you can get it into the frame. And then we want to take our pull wire and feed the pull wire down through the corresponding holes. We can lift the hitch up for a line up, have the bolts come down through, pull that pull wire off, and for the bolts on the bottom, we're going to attach it using a flange nut. Now you do kind of want to be a little careful not to push that bolt in the frame when you're first getting it started. And I do suggest getting at least one piece of hardware on each side so the hitch will hold itself up, and then we can get the rest of the hardware in place. Now that we have the bottom bolts in place, you may find it a little difficult to get those holes lined up on the side of the frame. So what I'm going to do is tighten up the bottom bolts using an 11/16 socket, and that'll suck the hitch up to where the holes will be lined up a little bit easier. We'll make sure we do that on both sides so the hitch isn't sitting at an angle, and again it'll help get those side plates aligned to where we can get the bolts in place. For the bolts on the side, we want to grab that same hex bolt. We're going to slide a conical tooth washer on there. It's going to be little teeth on there. You want to make sure they're facing towards the hitch. And we want to get our bolts started at least a few turns by hand on each side. And we can come back and tighten up all of our hardware. For the bolts on the side of the frame, we're going to use a 19mm socket to snug them up. We'll go over to the other side of the frame and tighten those as well. Now you want to make sure you come back with a torque wrench, and we're going to torque all of our hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. Now again, on the bottom here, the carriage bolts, we're going to use an 11/16 socket, and for the ones on the side, we're going to use either a 19mm or a 3/4 inch socket to tighten them up. And we'll go back and repeat that for all of our remaining hardware. Then once you have all the bolts torqued down, I'm going to spray a little bit more lubricant on the hanger in the isolator. Just makes it a little bit easier to slide it back in place. So we'll lift it up, slide the hanger back on, and we'll do the same thing on the other side. And with that reattached, we can remove the support strap from earlier. And that'll finish up your installation and your look at the CURT Class 1 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver on our 2020 Buick Encore.